And now, a word from our sponsors. The Oyster Recovery Partnership is the nonprofit expert in Chesapeake Bay oyster restoration. Oyster Recovery Partnership has planted more than 9 billion oysters on 3,000 acres of reef and recycled more than 250 bushels of shell. Everyone benefits from a healthy Chesapeake Bay. Poor water quality and declining habitats can be reversed. Oysters are the answer. Pescavore is packaged in a convenient single serving size with no refrigeration required until after opening. Pescavore is the perfect, healthy, and delicious snack for those on the go. Pescavore, tuna that travels. Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your oyster ninja. I'm here with the legends in the game, or the representative anyway, but Allison's real cool. Allison is working with ORP, and she's here to tell you today all about the cool things that ORP is doing. What's going on? Allison, how are you?
Hey Gardner, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
For sure. So, what do you do for ORP? And tell us what ORP is.
So ORP stands for Oyster Recovery Partnership. We are an Annapolis-based nonprofit. We've been around since 1994, and we are solely dedicated to putting oysters back into the Chesapeake Bay. We do that in a number of ways. We are rebuilding historic sanctuary reefs. We're helping out with the public fishery by planting oysters on public fishery reefs. We recycle oyster shell to support all of that work. And we're trying to get the public involved through hands-on events and volunteering. So oysterrecovery.org, you can get the full rundown. And I'm really excited to be here and talk more to your listeners about all the cool stuff we do, because it's a pretty niche world. And I'm guessing if they listen to your podcast, they're into it.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's that's what we hope for. We hope that the listeners, but you know what? I do want to say this before we get started. Thank you guys for listening. Telling a friend to tell a friend about the podcast, because I'm looking at the numbers and the numbers don't lie. Y'all are listening. I think y'all like me. I think y'all like the Oyster Ninja. That's cool. So Allison, how long have you been with ORP, and what made you why do you care?
So I started at ORP in 2019, and I have a background in environmental science and policy, went to grad school for environmental science and policy, and just kind of, I don't know, fell in love with this small but mighty creature. I mean, I was recruited to ORP. I didn't know much about oysters, but I had, that environmental background, and I've just kind of fallen in love. Like, it's such a cool little organism that does so much, definitely punches above its weight. So it's easy to get sucked in.
No doubt about that, man. It's so addicting. I said this is kind of like the worst, best drug that you could ever get addicted to. Like the lifestyle and the oyster community is crazy. The oyster festivals and events, like we're gonna be talking about a little later. Um, yeah, it's powerful drug. Um, so I do want to ask you this real simple question, just starting off. Like, you said you didn't really know a lot about oysters and you got recruited. So, like, since you've started this path in oysters, what's like the fun fact if you that you learned that you didn't know about, or something just interesting?
Oh man, there's so many. I'm trying not to just like spit out the same old thing that people
Yeah.
always say, right? 50 gallons, bays of the kidney, keystone species. Um, I guess that one of
What's
the
what's the
one of-
bays of the kidney? You said bays of the kidney?
oh, kidneys of the bay is what
What
I
is
meant
that?
to say. Did I say
Oh,
it
okay.
backwards?
I don't know. I never heard of that.
Yeah, so as we all know, oysters are filter feeders, which I guess if we're anthropomorphizing them, talking about them like they're humans, they're the kidneys of the Chesapeake Bay. They keep the water clean, filter out those excess nutrients that flow into the bay, as well as sediment and pollution, and turn that into their tissue. Like literally, build themselves off of eating that stuff that's bad for the bay. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
but I think my favorite slash the most interesting oyster fact that I find intriguing is that they don't have a nervous system. So there's this like big debate in the vegan and vegetarian community about whether they are quote unquote safe to eat, or if that's a violation of, I guess, someone's personal beliefs. I guess it totally depends on your reason for being a vegan or a vegetarian, but I just think that that is cool that this little creature sparks all of this debate. um
Yeah, it's trending. Oysters are always trending. And I'm sure the listeners might have remembered, they might not, but I got kicked out of a Facebook group one time, a vegan Facebook group.
Uh-oh.
And this is actually when I used to work a lot with Nick, uh, from the local oyster, and that was our selling point. Like we would always say, they're vegans can eat them too because they don't have a central nervous system, and that was just a selling point. And we got a lot of people to at least try an oyster, saying that. But so I went to this vegan Facebook group, and I probably was doing a little self-promoting, uh breaking all the rules. But yeah, oh Lord, like they cussed me out.
Like
Like they cussed me, not literally cussed me out, but just a lot of mad typing, you know, and
caps and exclamation points.
all of it. All of it. And yeah, I apologize, and I don't know if I got kicked out. I think I do know I definitely left that group, and I was like, all right, note taken, won't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see you getting in there stirring up trouble. There's no
It's a
such
little
thing
bit.
as bad press, right?
Right, right. Ah, that's a whole nother topic. But anywho, how was your National Oyster Day? How was ORP's National Oyster weekend?
So National Oyster Weekend was amazing, but I want to rephrase your question a little bit because it wasn't about ORP really. It was about all of our restaurant partners who participate in our Shell Recycling Alliance and really bringing attention and awareness to the efforts that they go to recycle oyster shell, with us and through our program. And that really enables us to do the work that we do. We can't rebuild oyster reefs without oyster shell, or some kind of hard substrate. So really National Oyster Weekend, is about them and bringing attention to them. So I would say that we knocked it out of the park thanks to the help of, a PR company that we engaged, Collins and Co. Shout out Collins and Co. They're great. And gosh, we got something like 25 television station hits in DC, Baltimore, and the Annapolis area, pushing people to events at Guinness, the Walrus Oyster and Ale House, the Salt Line, gosh, on and on and on. I can't even remember. There were so many now. So
Yeah,
we are super happy about, the coverage. And we hope that all of those shell recycling restaurants got mobbed all weekend long and people are just eating oysters like it's their job. And, I guess the shell recycling crew we'll have the data this week to see if those bushel baskets are overflowing when they go to pick them up. So I think National Oyster Weekend was a huge success. And I want to thank Maryland's Best Seafood for sponsoring National Oyster Weekend. We couldn't have, done it without their support. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. I love hearing news like that. And let's take it back a little bit. So for the folks who are kind of like, oh, what's she talking about? Like these shell recycling. Can you just talk a little bit? First of all, I want you to go into the process of shell recycling, starting with consumer or maybe even from the oyster farmer. And then like how does a restaurant even sign up to if they want to be a part of this, and what regions do you serve, and things like that?
Great questions. So we ORP started the Shell Recycling Alliance in 2010, and it was really to capture all those oyster shells that were getting, thrown away, um, to help us do what we do. And so we like to talk about the life cycle of an oyster shell from plate to reef. So we actually have a really cool infographic that describes this that I'll share with you, Gardner. Hopefully you can, throw the link up on your podcast notes or something. But so we pick up, well, I guess from a consumer's point of view, you receive a plate full of freshly shucked Chesapeake Bay oysters. They're delicious. You eat them, you're satisfied and happy. But then what happens to those shells when you put them back, leave the restaurant? So the restaurant busing staff collects those shells, puts them in a receptacle. ORP, literally has a crew of men who drive around, and women, I should say. Sorry, not just men. We're equal opportunity. ORP has a crew that drives around in a big stake body truck with a lift gate because oyster shells are heavy, as you know. And they pick up oyster shell in these giant trash bins from 200 restaurants throughout Maryland, DC, Virginia, and even Pittsburgh. And then we take those shells, we amass them in this huge facility in Graysonville where they sit for a year and let the, Mother Nature do her work to get rid of all that stinky organic matter. Like they get rained on and baked in the sun. And a year later, another crew, we have a satellite office, not office really, satellite operation in Cambridge. Our field crew is based in Cambridge, Maryland. And they pick up the shells from Graysonville, they take them down to Cambridge, they put them through a shell washer, which is really just like we spray, I think, water from the little chop tank all over them to remove any of that last organic matter. And then we put them in these giant cages in setting tanks. They're huge. I don't know how many gallons they hold, but they're huge. And we fill those setting tanks with water. The incredible staff at the University of Maryland, I'm sorry, I didn't get that right. University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, Horn Point Lab. They breed oysters and they, pour larvae all over top of these oyster shells in the setting tanks. Then like 14 days later, the little oyster larvae connect to the shells. They're called spat-on shell at that point. We airlift them out with a huge crane and load them onto a planting vessel. And then that vessel drives out to basically not middle of nowhere, but unfortunately not where anybody can watch this happen, out into the Chesapeake Bay and plants those spat-on shell on set coordinates, designated by Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, they become a big, beautiful oyster reef, with happy, healthy oysters that will eventually breed on their own.
And you guys
That's a long
are
answer.
no, it would. I mean, the answer is the answer, right? Thank you. And you guys are about to hit a landmark. You're about to hit a specific number.
We're about to hit a really important milestone. I guess we could call this breaking news for Oyster Ninja podcast listeners. You heard it first here. We're about to plant 10 billion oysters, which is pretty amazing, considering, the amount of partners, men and women, scientists, marketers, communicators, government officials, politicians, all the people that it's taken to bring this to reality. It's pretty amazing. So 10 billion oysters planted coming very, very soon.
So I hate to go into and I don't even say not the politics of it, but just the backroom things. You told us what happens up front. The people eat oysters, we recycle them, we get them from the restaurants, we wash, we plant them back in the bay. But that's easier said than done. like, can you go or even touch into like what that back room looks like just making these connections and
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't think that I am qualified to share all those details. I'm
okay.
pretty new to the oyster game. I'm only 3 years in.
Hmm.
But uh, my my coworkers and my colleagues who've been working in this field longer than I have certainly could, and hopefully we'll get them on a future episode of the Oyster Ninja podcast.
So we've hit this big number. And now you know what I think? I think it's time to celebrate.
Me too.
So you guys got a party that's about to go down. What can
Oh
you tell
yes.
us about that? Can you spread news?
Oh yes. Oh yes. So we've got a big celebration in the works. It's called The World is Your Oyster Festival. It's taking place on Saturday, October 8th from 12 to 4 p.m. at the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore. And there actually is a cool historic tie-in because it was the railroads and the port of Baltimore that really allowed the oyster craze to take off in the 1800s. So we like to call Baltimore Maryland's historic oyster city. But World is Your Oyster Fest is going to be a blowout party. And anybody who knows ORP probably knows our previous event, which was called Mermaid's Kiss, which was a fantastic event. We decided to build off of the success of Mermaid's Kiss. So you'll find all the same stuff that was at Mermaid's Kiss. We're going to have delicious, small bites of seafood, delicious offerings from our shell recycling restaurant partners. We will also have healthy amounts of libations from our partners like Flying Dog and Guinness, Wither Hills Wine, Pearl Vodka, and more. And we will have oysters from throughout the Chesapeake Bay. We've got 10 farms signed on. So you'll really get to try those different flavor profiles of oysters, which is a cool thing. We're also going to have a classes to teach people how to shuck oysters so you can learn this cool skill and go home and show your friends and family, and also like have your own oyster parties and recycle your own oyster shells. We're having our first ever oyster shucking competition, which is a qualifying event for the U.S. National Oyster Shucking Competition taking place the following weekend in St. Mary's County. And I think, Gardner, you may have agreed to participate in that competition, which I'm pretty
I
excited about.
I may. It's a high probability that I'll be there. So I'll put it like
Well, I
that.
hope so.
um,
I hope so.
say again.
And then we're also gonna, oh, I said I hope so. I hope you'll be there. We definitely want you to be there. And we've got oyster art, Kim Havel, an incredible Annapolis-based artist, and Goodlow Byron, a Frederick-based artist, will both be on site doing cool oyster art and all kinds of oyster merch. Like, it's going to be a super fun party festival. Come, bring your friends, help us celebrate, the 10 billion milestone.
Party over here.
Party, party.
So is that going to be like a pay as you go, or is it like a ticketed event? How's that going to work?
So it is a ticketed event. General admission tickets get you access to everything I just described. The ticket price is $165. It's a little high, but you're getting a ton of value for that price. So
Yeah.
all inclusive, don't be scared. We've got plenty of room. Just, come on down, help us celebrate.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's gonna be a party. I mean, 10 different types of oysters all in one place. Wow, that's gonna be crazy. And then the shucking competition. I'm gonna try and make it. I'm definitely gonna try and make it. I love,
Gotta be
you know
there.
what? Even when I'm not competing, I just love looking at people shuck oysters. It's an art. It's an
Mhm.
art. And rolling into that, I know you said you guys work a lot with the people, with the shucking classes and other educational. Can you talk a little bit about what RP does like on that level?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have I guess it's a course, although it's more fun than really like learning. We call it Shuck Like a Pro. We do it all around the area. We're actually doing a Shuck Like a Pro with a brewery called Firm in Anne Arundel County this week. So we list well, I guess Shuck Like a Pro is all about, one-on-one teaching people how to shuck oysters and be comfortable doing so. And then you get to walk away with your own little shucking kit, like a shucking knife, a glove, and a little block, like a shucking block, which is important if you've never shucked before.
The
It's
block is very important. Take my word for it.
And so, yeah, we just, partner here and there. We always list our upcoming events on our events page at oysterrecovery.org. So check it out. There's usually one happening within the next month or so.
And I'm not cutting this short, but I am saying this. If you guys have not been listening to the podcast, ORP is the newest sponsor of the Oyster Ninja podcast. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for spreading the good word about how important oysters are.
Thank you so much. So with that being said, you're going to be hearing more from Allison as different events come up. Because we got to hit y'all. We got to hit you guys up in the fall and the spring and stuff. We got to let you know it's always something going on in the oyster community, and ORP is leading the way. That's another reason why I was very, very interested in like even asking you guys. I didn't know how to go about it, but I was like, it's kind of like a no-brainer. They're doing good things for oyster community. I'm doing good things for the oyster community. Let's work together and spread the oyster message. And here we are. So we're gonna have Allison back on and maybe some other guests, like you said, your colleagues. So thank you so much. Any lasting messages, or of course the social medias, email, whatever you got.
Yeah, so Oyster Recovery Partnership, it's no coincidence that partnership is a part of our name. We can't do what we do without a huge network of partners. And we're so happy to welcome the Oyster Ninja podcast as one of those new partners. So thank you for reaching out to us. I hope everybody will follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Oyster Recovery, and also, learn more about what we do on our website, oysterrecovery.org.
And they got, of course, the classic video. I think you guys still have it, of the oyster filtering the water, from how it is out of the bay to what it can be. Just like not even a lot of oysters. How many oysters is it? Is it like it's a small amount, right?
Oh, I can't remember how many that video was, something like 2 or 3 dozen.
Yeah. And
over 5 hours.
Check the video out. I'll leave a link on that in the description too. Thank you guys for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Leave a review on the podcast. All that helps. And Allison, again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and working together with the Oyster Ninja podcast. And I love it.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm so excited to be partnering with you, Gardner.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
And now a word from our sponsors.
My name's Matt Owens, and I'm the founder and CEO of Healthy Ocean Seafood Company, the owner of the Pescavore brand. For the last 5 years, 6 years now, actually, I've been the sustainability director at Trimarine, which is a global tuna supplier. We're down here at San Pedro right now at a Trimarine facility. And so for the last several years, I've been working to effectively manage tuna resources all around the world. So we have these great sustainable fisheries in the US, but most of that gets exported, a lot of times processed overseas, then imported back into the United States. We have a huge seafood trade deficit. And I wanted to find a way in which I could add value to the resource here on the West Coast and bring it to market here on the West Coast. And so that's really how Pescavore started. And so to take a West Coast caught tuna and process it into something that's different, something that's delicious, something that's convenient, something that's healthy, and something that's sustainable. And that's what Pescavore brand is all about. It's making seafood snackable, it's taking sustainable tuna and it's bringing it into the snack space so that it's convenient for people. You can eat it anywhere, it's delicious, it's good for you, and importantly, you can feel good about it. You're supporting local fishermen, you're supporting a sustainable fishery that's well managed.